everybody, Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady, here with my co-host, JC.
Hey, Wendy, it's a pleasure to be back. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Sorry, everybody else can't see us because this is audio only. I kind of like it though. When we first started doing podcasting, JC and I together, I was like, oh, we should do video. And then we decided no. And in the end, I'm so glad we did it because he could do it in our pajamas half the time.
Well, to me, it goes back, and I'm old. Okay. I don't know if anyone out there listening remembers Headbangers Ball or the Podfather himself. I won't drop names, but there's something about the theater of the mind, and there's something to be said for being able to hone in on the voice and really absorb a message that's being transferred. You get to paint that picture, and that's what I'm looking forward to today, Wendy, painting that picture in the mind as we speak to this amazing guest.
Yeah, so let's jump over here and talk about our guest, Wayne Mullins. He is the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing. I love that. And the author of Full Circle Marketing. And he believes that culture eats strategy for breakfast. He's very passionate about what he does and wants his team to be producing extraordinary results for their clients. So welcome, Wayne.
Thank you both so much. I'm excited for this chat today. And, I didn't realize we weren't doing video. So I did the whole hair and makeup thing. And I guess, it's a bit of a waste, but we're here.
You look amazing. You look amazing.
You look amazing. For our listeners, we do use Zoom to communicate and more of like, hey, wrap it up. But, so we see you. I see you, Wayne. Hey, talk to us about your team and your focus on building a team, but more importantly, on the fact that, you believe, and I'm with you, that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah, first of all, I'm super passionate, as you mentioned, Wendy, about this topic and about this conversation. I think we live in a world, in a society that so often culture gets overlooked. It becomes a side thing. It becomes a thing that we're going to get to one day. And I know that to be true because that was my exact story for probably the first 6 or 7 years that I ran this agency. All of those years, culture was this thing that one day in the future, when we had more money, when we had more time, when we had more resources, we were going to address culture. But what I've since discovered is that if you are not intentionally building a remarkable culture, then you are unintentionally building a mediocre culture.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. For so long, we've pushed things to the side. Yeah, we'll deal with that later. Yeah, we'll deal with that later. And then later never came, or just about to roll out, a new cultural program, management training, employee training, and then, budget cuts, that needs to go away. I for one think that I'm not thankful for COVID because there was a lot of horrible things that happened, but I think it did force a lot of companies to say we have to change our culture. And on top of that, and you tell me what you think, Wayne or JC, on top of that, our younger generations demand it. They will only work for or work with companies that are focusing on culture and making sure it's a safe environment, an environment that, projects learning and development and taking care of not only the customer, which we usually only focus on, but taking care of the employee. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, JC, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in right away. I'm ready, Wayne. Look, 83% of strategies ultimately fail due to faulty assumptions, and 67% of key functions are misaligned within corporate strategies. So when we hear culture eats strategy for breakfast, we immediately feel a little defensive right away, especially if we've been, emboldened with being on those teams that are helping with strategic plans and looking to the future. But when we consider the fact that 83% of strategies fail due to faulty assumptions, it's so true. If your culture isn't properly aligned and you are not moving forward with getting the buy-in from those younger generations, or maybe passing the torch appropriately as older generations are moving along and people are moving up within the organization, and that culture isn't properly aligned, you're going to fail every time. And look, I think Wayne's right. He's worked with 91 clients in different industries in 34 states and 11 countries. I think there's only 12 countries in the world, right? Wait, no, come on. Work with me here. I do believe that you're hitting a home run with this one, though, because you could have the best strategy in the world. If your culture isn't properly defined and the people don't buy in, it's dead on arrival, right? Or do I have that wrong?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And what's super fascinating about our conversation today is this, that exactly 4 years ago today, I was on an airplane flying across the country. So from the time we're recording this 4 years ago today was when everything got shut down. And I'm going to show you all this on the screen here. No one else can see this, but this is a picture of an empty tram at the airport when I landed at LAX.
Wow.
No one was there. The entire at that point, California had shut down as I was in flight from Texas there. And here's the interesting thing about that. And you alluded to some of those stats, JC, when you were talking, is this, that going into that year, going into 2020, every company that was a growth-oriented company, they had spent the previous, Q3 or Q4 of the last year building out these strategies, setting goals, setting objectives, defining all the core metrics. And then we get thrown this curveball, and all of those strategies in an instant are no longer valid. All of those strategies go out the door. And in that moment, in that period of time, as Wendy was saying, what was revealed was COVID didn't break your culture. COVID actually revealed the true culture that was always there. And so the question, if you want to analyze your culture and figure out what your culture actually is, your true culture is the way that people perform when the boss is not present. When the boss is away, that is when your culture, what really takes place, the way really people interact, the way they treat each other, the way they treat clients, that is when it's revealed. So I completely agree.
I want you to talk to us about, building a team. If somebody is taking over a team, they're just hired as a manager, a director, whatever it might be, executive director, and they're handed a team, or they're a new manager and they're saying, I have one person and now I need 5. Where does somebody start with building a team? Hi, I'm your manager. Let's get to it.
Yeah. I love this question because we move into those actions, into those functions by default, right? So when we inherit a team or when we have to hire new people, we just do what we've always done, or we do what the people before us have done. And we never stop and question, is there a better way? Is there a way that I can actually impact and make a meaningful difference in this culture? And so number one, what I would say is this, that we have to first come to the understanding that culture comes from the same Latin word as cultivate. And so what that means is it's a constant process. It's not a one-time thing. We constantly have to be tending to and working on the soul, right? The environment, the culture that we're creating. And then the next part is this. I believe there are 4 core questions that really help us define and determine the culture that we want. And it's by clearly being able to answer these questions that we are able to then differentiate our culture from mediocre cultures, or from cultures that are okay accepting the status quo. And the thing is, these questions are easy, but they're not simple. In other words, it takes some work. We have to really dig through these questions and really put some thought behind how we answer these 4 questions.
What are they? What are they? What are they?
Yeah. The very first question is simply this: where are we going? Where are we going? As a leader, as an organization, we must have a clear vision of the future. We must be able to clearly articulate to the team what the future that we want to create looks like. Now, that sounds very counterintuitive, and we all know that, we should have a vision for the future. And yet, so few leaders, so few organizations actually take the time to develop and write out a vision for what the future is going to look like. That is one of the things that the younger generations, they want to know, what are we building towards, right? And that ties into the next question, which is, why does this matter? So where are we going? And then why does this even matter? Like, I see the future. I understand where we're trying to get to, what we're trying to create, but why does this even matter? And that is where our mission comes in. That is where the values of the organization come into play. Again, words and terms that we all are familiar with, words and terms that for me, for 6 or 7 years, I was going to get to those things one day, but I was too busy doing quote unquote important work before that. And then the third question is this: what is expected of them? We must clearly articulate the expectations for each team member. So often we bring people in, we tell them, this is what you're going to be doing. They start doing things, and then we get frustrated because they're not doing the things that we expected. Then they come to us and they explain all the things they've done, happy to report how they poured their heart and soul into these things. And we tell them they've been doing the wrong things. So we, as leaders, have to set clear expectations. We have to be sure that they understand those expectations. And the way we do that, we have what's called an expectation guide. It just identifies, here's what's expected of you as a member of our team. These are the expectations. These are the things we live up to day in and day out. This is how we operate. And then the fourth question is this: how and when will you measure my performance? How and when will you measure my performance? And there's one key distinction here. What we've discovered over time is that when you enable your team to self-evaluate on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, it empowers them unlike anything else. You think about it, all of us, to some shape or degree, we like sports. The sports could vary. The type of sports may vary. The type of things we're interested in may vary. But what's interesting is sports have scoreboards. People are able to see in the stands in real time what the score is. The players are able to look up and see in real time where they stand, so they can make adjustments to their performance in real time. So I really believe that when you create structure so that your team can self-evaluate, they know how they're performing, they know where they stand in relation to those expectations, it transforms the way they operate.
I love it. When you were going down your 4 steps there, I was like, oh, I've got something to add, and you covered it. So I am so happy to have you on our show today. You know, one of my things that I'm always doing when I'm doing management training, and it could be new managers or managers who've been there a while, is like, you know, the number 3 and the 4, what is expected of them? You know, be specific, be crystal clear. Don't treat them like an idiot, but be crystal clear. Like, do you want me to deliver this to you, you know, in a 20-page binder? Do you want me to email it to you? Do you want it to be in a PowerPoint? Like, instead of just saying, get me the stats, like, how specifically do you want your employees to deliver the final product? And then when is it due? Oh, just get it to me. Okay. Do you want me to stay late today? Are you going to pay me overtime? Is it due Friday at 9 a.m., Friday at 5 p.m.? Who else is involved in it too? Because then we got to do some backwards planning to saying, well, if I need to hand it in by Friday at 9 a.m., 3 other people need to touch and feel this project, and they need to be involved. And it's so, like, some of this just seems so simple, but it's not. Why? Because we have this H involved, humans. Yeah. And humans are complex, and they got their own things going on, their own work, their own problems, business problems, personal problems. So it can get so simple. But I love your 4 steps of where are we going? Why does this matter? Mission and values. I'm big on that. In one of my books, I talk about how to create company values. You know, what is expected of them, and how and when will you measure my performance versus it's done. Oh, I beat everybody to the punch. Well, you didn't do it right. You didn't explain to me what right means. So super, super important to get all of this done. I love the statement, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think it was first heard by Peter Drucker, right? Yeah. It was the first one that we know that said that. And, you know, any other last pieces of advice that you would give our listeners before we wrap up, and then let them know how they can reach you as well?
Sure. I think the other big thing to think about is that by default, most of us as leaders, we tend to vacillate to one of 2 extremes. We either tend to micromanage people, or we tend to kind of wash our hands and we disappear, and then we pop back in, and then we critique and we criticize, and we're frustrated because things weren't done, like you were just saying, the way we expected or needed or wanted them to be done. And so I love to think about it like a seesaw at a playground. And it's our job as good leaders to keep those 2 things in balance. In other words, the need for alignment around the mission, the vision, the values, the expectations, And then the other extreme of that is autonomy, giving our people the freedom to use their gifts, their abilities, their talents to execute based on what we're trying to accomplish and what is expected of them. But we must, we first have to look internally and say, which of those two extremes do I tend to default to? Do I tend to micromanage, or do I tend to abdicate everything and just disappear and then pop back in and swoop in and tell everyone they're wrong, or, whatever it may be? And so learning to keep those two things in balance will not only serve us well as leaders and help us not to be so frustrated with our teams, but it serves our people well because they clearly understand where we're going, why it matters, and how we will measure their performance.
I absolutely love that. And how can people find you? Obviously, LinkedIn is one of them, right?
It is. The simplest place may be our website. That's just uglymugmarketing.com. All of our social channels are linked there, email addresses, phone numbers, and all that good stuff.
I love it. Ugly Mug Marketing. I don't even want to know where that came from. That's for a different show for a different time. But today here we have Wayne Mullins, the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing and author of Full Circle Marketing. And he firmly believes that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I am 1000% in support of you. So thanks for joining us today, Wayne. And thanks to our listeners. I wanted to quickly give a little prop here. If you're looking for another podcast, a quick and enlightening way to start your day, consider checking out JC's daily podcast, Interesting Things with JC. It lasts 2 to 5 minutes per podcast and is perfect for fitting into your busy work week and learning some weird, interesting, and really cool things. You could find that on all the podcast platforms or by visiting jimconnors.net. Thanks for joining us.